we'll now be starting our VIP project, and it's called VIP Student Fair. And yeah, we'll now begin your interview, in which we'll talk about like your choice of studies and your life as a university student in the country you're studying in. So yeah, to start off, could you introduce yourself for a bit?
Yeah, my name is Tomasz Dejewski. I am currently studying at Utrecht University. I am 22 years old. I'm finishing my final third-year bachelor's degree. So currently my major and the general course I'm studying is called Politics, Philosophy, and Economics, PPE in short. It also has a large history component to it. So technically it's Politics, Philosophy, Economics, and History, but they don't add history to the acronym.
To mam na imię Hoang. Jestem na pierwszym roku studiów w Holandii. Studiuję ekonometrię w Tilburg University.
Powiesz, czemu wybrałeś to państwo i te studia?
Szukając studiów kierunku, to natknąłem się właśnie na ekonometrię, która nie jest bardzo znana i mało osób chce studiować to, ale stwierdziłem, że chcę studiować coś innego niż inni. Ekonometria zawiera też dużo takich przedmiotów typu analiza, statystyka, czym się bardzo interesuję. Tilburg University oferuje bardzo wysoką jakość tego kierunku. Wolałem też studiować w mniejszym państwie niż na przykład Amsterdam.
So, firstly, I was interested in economics, but I wanted something a little bit more than just pure economics. I know I always wanted some kind of politics or international relations aspect to it. And so when I found politics, philosophy, and economics was kind of like the perfect combination of the disciplines I was interested in. And also I didn't want to just choose one discipline. So there was a great way for me to have a lot of doors open so I can choose different types of directions if I still wanted to go to. It gave me a lot of flexibility. So that's why I chose PPE. And now in terms of the country, the reason I chose Netherlands over the UK is because I always wanted to be in a bit of a unusual or unconventional environment. And I figured a lot of my friends and a lot of people go to the UK. So I wanted something a little bit different, something a bit more relaxed, perhaps not as career oriented or not as competitive as the UK. And that's why I chose the Netherlands.
Could you give us like some examples of modules that you have to attend in your course, and like maybe like briefly describe them and like tell us which ones you like the most or the least?
Right. So in the first year, you do a lot of foundation to find the basic information of each discipline. But each class and each module you take is a combination of disciplines. So most of the time, it's never just one discipline. First quarter, because in Netherlands, the year is divided into 4 quarters instead of half a year. And so the first quarter, I had classes like comparative democratic institutions, global economic history. So that was economic and history combined together. I also had political philosophy, philosophy and politics combined together. I also had microeconomics, macroeconomics. So that was really interesting in the first year, and I really liked global economic history. So history and economics are my favorite disciplines. And in the second year, the cool thing is that you can specialize in one of the 4 tracks, and you don't specialize in a discipline, but you specialize in a kind of direction that has different kinds of disciplines combined in it. And so I specialized in the discipline that was more on the econ side, which was called market regulations. And during my time at market regulations, I studied basic law. I studied a little bit about corporate history, corporate law. And that was what I specialized in my second year.
Could you give us like a brief outline of how you applied to your school? Like what platform, did you need any examinations or interviews?
Right. So in general, when you apply to Netherlands, you always start with this website called StudyLink. And through that website, once you create your link and whatnot, you can look for your specific university and the course that you want to apply in. And you can choose to select it there. And once you enroll yourself there, then there are a couple other things you have to do depending on what university and what course you're in. So for my particular course, they wanted a personality test, they wanted interview, They wanted me to write a motivational essay. They wanted me to send over a CV. Right. So my university, my course won a lot of things because it's special, it's small, and it's intense, and it's a little bit harder, more selective to get into. So they wanted all those things. But it really depends on what course you go to and what program you did before. Because since I did IB, I didn't have to get English certification. But my friends who did the Abitur in Germany, or some people did the Matura in Polish, also had to do Cambridge exams or TOEFLs. So it really depends on what course you're applying to and what university you're applying to in Netherlands. But it always starts with the website Studien.
Okay, and I think you mentioned something like personality test. Could you like elaborate on that? Like what?
Yeah.
Test
I mean, that was quite unusual in the sense that I think I've only heard of my course doing it. But they sent me this link, the personality test they created. For example, they asked me questions like, are you more introverted? Are you more extroverted? I don't know, at parties, are you more reserved or are you more outgoing? So yeah, that was the personality test. It was very short. It was like multiple questions, 30 questions, 15 minutes. It was very quick.
Because you mentioned that you had like to write some language proficiency tests. Were there like any other requirements that you needed? For example, like do you remember how many? Because I know that you did IB, right? So
Yeah.
do you remember how much? What were your predicted grades to get into your school?
The nice thing about IB is that sometimes all you have to do is pass. So in my case, if I pass IB, I'm automatically in. Well, there was also a math condition. I had to have at least SO math, not math studies. Now the math is different, so the requirement might be different. But for IB specifically, if you pass IB, then you can join most courses. And in terms of, I know that like the Abitur, the Dutch system, they had to get a certain percentage, for example, to get in. But all I needed to do was pass.
Are there like, any particular aspects of your application that you think that your school especially looks out for in their like, prospective students that apply to their school?
I think what's important is that when they send you, I don't know if the procedure still looks the same, but originally when they sent me the essay questions, they asked me questions, for example, like, what kind of policy do you find important? What kind of topics and discussions? And I think if you're applying to something like PPE, like politics related, then it's important for you to have some kind of debate or some kind of problem or issue that you are actively involved in, or that you at least care about. And it can be anything from like women's rights to animal rights to any political issue. And I think that's what was important in my study, that you had some kind of social issue that you cared about, that you genuinely cared about. And that's what was important. Because then in the interview, they'll ask you about it, and in the questions you write about it.
Używa się study link, czyli takiej strony, przez którą składasz chęć uczenia się w danym uniwersytecie. Po złożeniu takiej chęci przez tą stronę, platformę, to szkoła przesyła jeszcze maila z ich stroną, gdzie składa się dokumenty tam. Po złożeniu dokumentów to szkoła sprawdza, czy są prawidłowe i czy są wystarczające na uczenie się na danych studiach.
Czy musiałeś na przykład pisać jakieś dodatkowe egzaminy?
To w moim przypadku to patrzyli na moją ocenę z matematyki. Pamiętam, że jedna ze szkół stwierdziła, że mój poziom matematyki jest za niski i poprosiła mnie, żebym napisał dodatkowy test z matematyki. I no, po tym teście stwierdzają, czy mój poziom matematyki jest na wystarczającym poziomie, czy nie. Pisałem test kwalifikujący z angielskiego, IELTS. Wiem, że też można TOEFL pisać.
Co sądzisz o twoim poziomie nauczania?
Poziom nauczania jest bardzo intensywny. Bardzo szybko lecimy z materiałem. Ucząc się tu w Holandii, na moim kierunku szczególnie, poza uczeniem się na kursie i na właśnie wykładach, to sam musisz jeszcze dołożyć duży wysiłek w uczeniu się właśnie poza i uczeniu się w domu, bo inaczej to będzie bardzo trudno później, żeby nadrobić z materiałem i żeby nadążać z innymi uczniami. U mnie też to wygląda tak, że każdy przedmiot jest dzielony na wykład i na tutorials, czyli zajęcia, gdzie robi się zadania i można właśnie wtedy zadawać pytania nauczycielom, wykładowcom na temat tych zadań i niezrozumiałości z wykładów czy zagadnień, których nie rozumiesz, możesz zadawać.
A co może ja mam takie małe, krótkie pytanie odnośnie tych tutorials. To w jakim formacie jakby one były tak 1 na 1 z profesorem, czy w takim...
Nie. Jest mniejsza grupa. W moim przypadku jest to około 20 osób i jest dwóch wykładowców, nauczycieli, którzy chodzą po klasie, pytają się, czy potrzebujemy pomocy, czy potrzebujemy w czymś i czy coś wytłumaczyć.
So my course had much more contact with the teacher, which was really nice. You saw them a couple hours a week, twice a week, instead of just once. So you had a lot of opportunities to ask, and there are a lot of classmates who are very eager and ambitious, so you can ask them. So the university teaching was pretty decent, although unfortunately they're a bit strict in the sense that they have a 7-week basis. So the year is divided into quarters, right? And every quarter is around 7 weeks. And so every week you change topics. And if you don't keep up, then you may have a difficult time and you fall behind because they move on regardless of how you feel. But my university, on the other hand, is also very forgiving because you can take a retake and do another retake. And that's very nice. So I like the fact that there's a lot of teacher support and a lot of teacher contact. And the content is quite interesting. Well, on the other hand, it moves and it doesn't really care whether you learn or not. You have to keep up by yourself. So that can be a little bit hard. In terms of the social aspect, the university in general doesn't have a university spirit. Like in the US, for example, you see they have teams and they come out, they do that. So in Netherlands, most of the time, you don't really have this overarching university spirit. What you do have, on the other hand, is study associations that are within your study. And that's where you make a lot of majority of your friends, and that's where you go to social events, also academic events.
Jak wygląda twoja sprawa finansowa? Czy miałaś jakieś dofinansowanie, pomocy finansowe?
Pomoc finansową mam od rodziców. Ja sam nie pracuję i nie zarabiam na razie jeszcze pieniędzy. Na razie to rodzice mi pomagają finansowo żyć i uczyć się tutaj.
A jaki jest twój czynsz na studia i na mieszkanie?
Moje mieszkanie, akurat teraz mieszkam w akademiku, więc on jest w miarę tani, że tak powiem, bo kosztuje to trochę ponad 500 euro miesięcznie. Mam własną łazienkę i dzielę kuchnię z 4 innymi uczniami, też z Tilburg University. Miesięcznie mam jeszcze dodatkowe 500 euro, żeby właśnie jedzenie kupić sobie na różne rozrywki. Wydaje mi się, że to jest taka okej suma, żeby na miesiąc żyć. A co do studiów, to mój pierwszy rok akurat kosztował tylko też trochę ponad 500-600 euro. Ale to tylko przez to, że był COVID i zredukowali o 50% nam pierwszy rok. A tak to drugi, trzeci rok to będzie tak 2200 euro kosztować.
The yearly tuition at almost every normal Dutch university is 2,000 euros per year. And in the first year, EU students get 50% off. But my course is special. That's what they say, special. And so my course costs double. My course costs 4,000 euros per year. But because of that 50% off, in my first year, I paid 2,000. So normally you pay 1, I paid 2 in the second year. I was meant to pay 4,000 for my second and third year as well. But because of Corona, in the second year, I still paid 4,000. But in the third year, they gave me a discount, so I paid 3,000. On the other hand, rent in the Netherlands is very expensive. You should expect to pay 400 to 600 euros per month for an apartment. And so that was a bit expensive. I paid around 400 to 600 euros per month for rent. In terms of financial support, majority of my financial support came from my parents. They paid for my studies and accommodations, and they also gave me spending money. I had a budget of around 600 to 800 euros, depending on what my rent was. Usually I would have around 400 to 500 euros spending money, and then 400, 600 euros on rent. And then I also worked a little bit in my first year, but then because of COVID, I couldn't. But to summarize, my income streams were my parents and then a job I had. Sorry. You could apply for a scholarship, but I didn't apply for it.
Regarding accommodation, do you have like, school dorms or private housing?
For most parts, there is private housing. They do offer student housing, but you have to apply for it, and it's a bit of a long process. Otherwise, if you study a specific course in Utrecht called Utrecht College University, Liberal Arts, then they provide you housing. But aside from that one course, you don't get housing. So I had to be in public housing or private housing.
Regarding the living fees and, travel fees and stuff like that, do you think that it was like, was this like expensive compared to like, for example, other parts of the Europe or like, Poland or...
So there are a certain amount of taxes that you have to pay, kind of municipal tax, like for trash and all that. So that might be a little bit. I think you should expect to pay maybe 100 euros per year, a bit more, depending on how many people you live with. Aside from that, transportation costs, just on a daily basis, if you're assuming you live in the city that you study in, then your only transportation cost is buying the bike. And once you bought a bike, then you never basically have to pay for tram or bus. Now, if you travel in between cities in the Netherlands, like from my city to Amsterdam, that can cost you 10 euros one way. So that's a little bit expensive. Public transport here from city to city is expensive. And tickets to Poland back are quite cheap, depending on when you buy them. Flights are pretty decent. I bought flights for 8 euros one way to Krakow, for example. Or I paid 20 euros to go back to Warsaw.
Did you personally have like some opportunity to take part in internships or get some work experience during the duration of your studies there?
Well, I was lucky enough to meet my friend whose parents had a company, and I did an internship there. So I think if you make good friends, maybe you could get an internship that way. Otherwise, I know that my study association also promoted some internships at some companies and think tanks. Other than that, my association also provided career days. So they advise you where to go, what to study. And then my university and my course also offered internships if you want to be an assistant researcher, like helping the professor look for data and information. So those kind of work experience.
And wages. Do you think it is easy to find employment in your country, like maybe in general or specific to your area of expertise?
In terms of my area of politics, philosophy, economics, it is possible that you find some kind of internships, because in The Hague, for example, you have all the international organizations, the United Nations, IMF, ICJ, ICC, etc. So you could potentially apply there. I don't know if you'll get it. Good chance you might. But in terms of other jobs, like working at a restaurant or at the store, then it's really easy. There are a lot of jobs. Very popular here is biking delivery, food delivery. It's very popular here. So those kind of low skill jobs are very easy to get, and the higher skill jobs are available. I don't know really how the market for it looks like, but there are there.
Może opowiesz o twoim życiu społecznym w twojej szkole. Jak mógłbyś opisać społeczeństwo tam?
No to mój uniwersytet jest bardzo international. Jest bardzo dużo osób z różnych krajów i bardzo łatwo się dogadać z ludźmi. Każdy jest bardzo miły. Każdy sobie pomaga. Co do organizacji takich większych, społecznych, to tu w Holandii jest dużo takich i można dołączyć do każdej organizacji i być częścią grupy, która właśnie też razem uczy się, czy życie pozaszkolne. Organizują różne imprezy i spotkania. Dużo takich jest i Osobiście ja nie jestem częścią żadnej grupy jeszcze, ale moi znajomi to każdy dołączył do jakiejś organizacji i mówią, że warto i że pomogło im to jakby poznać kraj i miasto, język też.
A czy wiesz, czy są jakieś takie organizacje, stowarzyszenia Wietnamczyków czy Azjatów, takich narodowościowo?
Nie, nie ma takich chyba właśnie dla młodszych. Wiem, że jest jakieś stowarzyszenie Wietnamczyków w Holandii, ale nie orientowałem się.
My particular study association was primarily for everyone who's studying PPE, and it was both academic and social. So we have subcommittees. We have like music committee, we have sports committee, chess committee. So it does both academic and social. Now, in terms of ethnic communities and associations, I think there are some, but I'm not aware of them. There is, for example, a Vietnamese youth in Netherlands, so kind of like our equivalent in Netherlands. So there's that.
How would you describe the community like in your university? Would you say that it's like, I don't know, laid back or strict or very ambitious?
The community at my particular study, because what you got to understand is that my university and Dutch universities in general are very big. They'll have 30,000 students, for example, and you don't know everyone. Most of the people you talk to will be people in your course. That's who you identify with. And so within my course, the community is actually very incredible. Like the people I've met come from the strangest backgrounds. They have the most interesting hobbies I've ever heard of. They've done some crazy shit in their lives, and they're also very ambitious to do very interesting things in the future. And my study has a spectrum of people. For example, there's one guy who is an extreme environmentalist. He gets arrested every other week and protests. And on the other hand, you've got the finance boys who are trying hard to get like internships and get into Oxford. So you really have a very wide range of people in my study.
Could you tell us like what was the most surprising thing upon arriving at your new school? Like at a completely different country, were there any culture differences between here and there?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of cultural differences between Netherlands and Poland. The thing that probably was most shocking and hard to get over is the fact that they mostly drink beer here. And back in Poland, I got used to drinking vodka, and I can't drink beer too well. So having to learn how to drink beer was a big one. The prices and things are really expensive. Dutch food is shit. You bike everywhere, which is kind of nice actually. What else? The weather's horrible most of the time. It's raining, it's windy. The people are very tall, but the wages are nice. The wages are nice. Imagine being paid 34, 40 zloty an hour for washing dishes. And for us, that's a lot. But then everyone I talked to, they pitied me. They were like, you only get paid €7 an hour. A lot of cultural shocks. Netherlands has a bit of a less of a culture than Vietnam and Poland does, but it's chill. They all speak English here, so that makes it really easy. I speak a little bit of German, so it's also easier for me to read and understand what they're saying. But for most part, everyone speaks English here, and that helps a lot.
Nie ma właśnie większej różnicy między Holandią a Polską. No, jedyne, co mnie zaskoczyło, to, że jest tu ogólnie bardzo dużo rowerów. No, wiedziałem, że właśnie życie w Holandii będzie polegać na rowerze, ale nie myślałem, że właśnie aż tyle rowerów będzie. Zaskoczyło mnie też, że dużo osób mówi po angielsku. Dosłownie, gdzie nie pójdę, to uda mi się skomunikować się z tą osobą po angielsku i bez problemu się dogadam.
Bo zacząłeś studiować podczas COVID-a, to jak wyglądała tam sytuacja covidowa?
Wydaje mi się, że tu sytuacja covidowa była trochę lżejsza niż w Polsce. Ludzie na początku roku, pamiętam, było ograniczenie osób na wykładzie na miejscu. Maksimum 75 uczniów można było przyjść na wykład tak stacjonarnie, a reszta musiała dołączyć właśnie online albo oglądać nagrane wykłady właśnie później.
I'd like to ask you if you know like why more and more people choose like the Netherlands? Why they are considering it?
In general, I think they choose Netherlands because it is much cheaper than the other alternatives. If you want to go abroad to study and the UK is a bit too much money, then Netherlands is the perfect substitute. And they also choose Netherlands over Germany, for example, because Germany has quite high requirements. You need to have some sort of level of German, physics, or English. But in Netherlands, not only do they accept almost everybody, but also their tuitions are relatively affordable. So I think that's why a lot of people choose Netherlands. The universities here are also really good because they're highly ranked. You get a good education. And it does get harder with the year. In the UK, a lot of the time when you pay for a degree, it's a lot of money. So you're very likely to pass the year because they don't want to fail you. But in Netherlands, on the other hand, it's easy to get in, but it's harder to stay in. So most of the people choose Netherlands because it's cheaper, and whether they can stay here or not, that's up to them. Oh, it's also English speaking. So that's also very nice for international students.
Holandia ogólnie ma też bardzo dobre studia i w porównaniu do na przykład takiej Wielkiej Brytanii czy Stanów Zjednoczonych, to koszt życia i studiów też jest tańszy. Wydaje mi się, że to też jest bardzo dużym czynnikiem. Uczniowie wybierają właśnie Holandię częściej.
Czy masz jakieś ostatnie porady lub przestrogi dla osób, które chcą studiować w swoim państwie czy swojej szkole?
Ogólnie to polecam studia w Holandii. Bardzo miło jest, tylko że jak już się tu, bo do Holandii się bardzo łatwo dostać, ale pierwszy rok zawsze będzie tym najtrudniejszym według mnie, ponieważ właśnie po pierwszym roku, jak się nie zdobędzie daną ilość punktów, żeby zdać, to właśnie wyrzucają takie osoby ze szkoły, więc pierwszy rok to według mnie bardzo trzeba się skupić na nauce i na tym, żeby właśnie zdobyć przynajmniej tą minimalną pulę punktów, żeby przejść do następnego roku i uczyć się dalej.
Well, this is a situation in both the UK and in Netherlands. Housing is very difficult to find. So if you do plan on studying in Netherlands or in the UK, you have to look early on, especially if you have a smaller budget, because it's difficult to find things within your price range, especially later on in the year. And so make sure that you look for housing, make sure you don't get scammed. And that's probably the main thing, because everything else is pretty easy to get accustomed to. Well, bring a rice cooker. Yeah, but that's it.